Hi there. This short video is just to help you reflect on the sermon from last Sunday, which was about John chapter 9. But I have an opening question for us just to get us underway as we reflect on this chapter. In what ways or way do our views of things get distorted such that we can't see clearly? In what ways do our view of things get distorted that we can't see clearly? And one thing you may need to think about is the role of social media in our lives. In what way can that distort our view of things such that we don't see clearly? Why don't you discuss that amongst yourselves for a few minutes? Our chapter this week is John chapter 9. Why don't you take some time to read it together as a group? Maybe take a few verses each and read through it. It's a long chapter. There's, I think, 41 verses, but it moves along at quite a clip. It's narrative. There's quite a lot going on, so it's not too difficult to read. So take some time to read through it once, will you please? Our chapter 9 begins. As he went along, that's Jesus, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" So my question for us is, did sin have anything to do with this man's blindness? Why or why not do you come to that conclusion? One of the commentaries I read in preparing for this message suggested that sin in general was responsible for the man's blindness, but not sin in the specific. And so whenever difficult circumstances come along in life, we shouldn't seek to link them to a particular sin. But sin coming into the world, in that nature is now distorted and broken down, relationships are damaged, sickness is more prevalent and suffering is more prevalent. That is a result of sin in the general, but not in the specific. So you may want to talk about that a bit more amongst yourselves before the next question. Now, the next question is, why did the Pharisees not accept that Jesus was, as it says in verse 16, from God? Why couldn't they accept that he was from God? What emotions were at play, do you think, for the religious experts and for the man's parents, for the neighbors and so on, that they couldn't accept that Jesus was from God? As we reflect on the passage, I think fear was very much an emotion at play here. For the parents, they weren't going to go with the Pharisees for fear of being excommunicated from the synagogue and being excluded from community life. I think for the Pharisees as well, fear is probably quite a big element. Fear of upset to the status quo if they were to go along with the possibility that Jesus was who he claimed to be. The next question for us, though, is the man, when he was questioned by the Pharisees, who is this Jesus? He answered, "Whether he is a sinner or not, I don't know. But one thing I do know, I was blind, but now I see." That's verse 25. In what ways do we make trusting Jesus too complicated? I mean, this man's faith was so simple. I couldn't see. Because of Jesus, now I can see. I'm going to follow him and accept him. In what ways do we today maybe make trusting Jesus too complicated, do you think? Towards the end of the passage, in verse 39, Jesus says, "For judgment I have come into this world, so that the blind will see, and those who see will become blind." How do you feel about Jesus' assertion that for judgment he has come into the world? And let me just read to you as well from the Message paraphrase of this verse. I think it's helpful. It reads, "Jesus then said, I came into the world to bring everything into the clear light of day, making all the distinctions clear, so that those who have never seen will see, and those who have made a great pretense of seeing will be exposed as blind." What are your reactions to Jesus' assertion here? Our final question, the Pharisees hear Jesus say what he just said in verse 39. And from verse 40 we read, "Some Pharisees who were with him heard him say this and asked, 'What? Are we blind too?' Jesus said, If you were blind, you would not be guilty of sin. But now that you claim you can see, your guilt remains. What did Jesus mean here, do you think? But now as you claim you can see, your guilt remains. Why don't you discuss that amongst yourselves for a moment? Just finishing up, why don't you take some time to pray together that Jesus would open our eyes, that we would see clearly. We need Jesus to open our eyes to see. It's not a matter of us trying really hard. There are certain spiritual realities that we will not see without his help. And if he is the light of the world, he can open our eyes, and indeed the eyes of loved ones who do not yet know him. So we can pray as well now for those who we would love to see Jesus clearly and to recognize who he is. Take some time to do that together, and have a good week. God bless.